the 40th Annual Edmonton Fringe Festival. In a normal year, the Old Strathcona Heritage District would be packed with thousands of people enjoying Canada's largest theatre festival. But while COVID cancelled last year's Fringe, this year a scaled-down pandemic 2021 Fringe went ahead, in spite of all obstacles and challenges, with strict masking and social distancing rules, and with actors and programmers taking artistic risks they might not have tried in a regular year. As a longtime Fringe fan and participant myself, I wanted to celebrate and showcase some of the creativity and artistic courage of this year's Edmonton Fringe. Davina Stewart is one of Edmonton's most iconic actresses. Most Fringes, you'd see her appearing in several large theatrical ensembles. This year, though, she tried something quite different. Her first ever one-woman show, Woman Caught Unaware, a piece that she could rehearse safely in a very small bubble, and a script discovered for her by director Trevor Schmidt, the artistic director of Edmonton's Northern Light Theatre.
"I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you," she muttered.
I researched a lot of plays for my job at Northern Light Theatre, and so I had found this one-woman play, a reference to it. It's part of a book called Heretic Voices, which is a competition that's held in the UK, Heretic Voices, and it looks for monologue plays. And this was one of the 3 winning plays a few years ago. And the playwright is a former actress who now teaches English and writing, creative writing. This is the North American premiere of the play, and she's connected with both of us on social media and stuff, and she's really excited about it.
And we recorded the film a week before we were even ready to open, so it's a different kind of version, but what the show is. But she gets to see it.
Yeah.
In England, she can watch it, and I think that was kind of an exciting thing to be able to, the restrictions that we have this year have, in fact, opened up in ways that we never thought we could.
Yeah.
The Fringe this year was
so
different.
Shook up.
It wasn't really clear as to what the guidelines or restrictions were going to be for performing. And typically here at the Varscona, we don't have one-person shows on the stage because it's a big stage, big venue. We try to utilize it in a way that so a lot of artists can be part of it. And so it was suddenly became apparent that there weren't going to be that many productions this year. And so it was early July where I went, the play you're talking about, that might be kind of interesting to do this year. Behind the blonde woman was a knobbly gnarled figure, hunched, purple-veined, ugly. And from that angle, it took me a good minute before I recognized myself. So I've been performing, but I do have to say, the first performance here, I was backstage, and there was this buzz of the audience, and it kind of caught me by surprise, because I went, oh, that's what we've been missing, just that excitement. And to hear the excitement of the audience being in the venue and being the first in here was thrilling to experience that energy,
Meanwhile, at the Backstage Theatre, up-and-coming director Jeong and the cast of Chonzo are getting ready for their performance. COVID caution meant doing most of their rehearsals on Zoom, so it's exciting for their ensemble to be together in the same place at last.
Bezo, don't you think this is something we should at least discuss?
You chose not to be a part of this family a long time. Theater is a very in-person experience, and rehearsals are where you form a lot of the bonds that then you take on stage. So it was really up in the air for a bit, and there was really this element of uncertainty when it came to whether or not we'd be able to pull it together as a team.
Get out! No one is leaving until we figure out all of this, okay? No one's leaving.
Only maybe a month ago, we were able to see each other in person. We were able to book rehearsal space. And it was really refreshing to hear 2 people speak at the same time. It was like, oh, wow. It feels alive for some reason. Because in Zoom, you go like, I'm sorry. But it's like, oh, everybody's speaking at once. We're stage manager and assistant director is doing something here. I'm talking with another actor and the other actors are doing here. So it's like having that collaborative energy just kind of bounce off each other. That was something that we missed, especially because the show is a lot about family and how we discuss things and how we are as people. Chonzo is about a Kenyan Canadian who goes back to Kenya with his Canadian girlfriend after a tragedy occurs in his family.
The role means a lot for me. Chonzo is a character that
I grew up with people that are like Chonzo, and like I know a lot of people that are like other characters in the show, and it's I think it's something that's not talked about enough. On top of that, with the character as well, like being a Black Canadian, code switching is something a lot of us have to do, and especially playing Chonzo, I know exactly how he feels of not feeling African enough or Black enough, but also not feeling Canadian enough, and trying to prove both sides.
I connected to it from a different perspective of like split identity. So I'm mixed race. I'm half white, half Egyptian, and my whole life I've sort of experienced this conflict of like what it means to have two sides to my identity. And even though I play, the only white character in the show, I really connect to that struggle that Chonzo especially has of, does he identify as Canadian or Kenyan, and what does that mean for how he can relate to his family and his girlfriend and like himself? So that's what it meant to me.
We came through, and I'm really excited to say that this show is fire.
Bienvenue maintenant to Edmonton's vibrant French Quarter, just a few blocks east of the main Fringe site, home to yet more 40th Fringe action at the theaters of La Cité francophone.
Je m'appelle André Roy, et puis la pièce en anglais s'appelle Everything is Beautiful. En français, nous l'avons voyagé sous le titre de quoi donc? Prends mes yeux, tu vas voir. Puis, on a voulu la traduire en anglais pour le Fringe, pour pouvoir peut-être rejoindre un autre public, parce qu'en français, on l'a joué déjà plusieurs fois. Alors, c'est pour ça qu'on l'a traduit en anglais pour pouvoir la véhiculer dans le Fringe de cette année.
You could be dead on the sidewalk, huh? And they'd walk right over you like this, and wouldn't even say, "Excuse me."
Come on, that has nothing to do with being a senior.
For me, it's a bit of a challenge because I've always played in French. I did a play at the Studio Theatre at the University of Alberta in 1994, I think, and I played in English there, but that was the only time I ever played in English. So for me, it's a bit of I have to adapt a little bit, and but we speak English all the time, so it shouldn't be a problem. And what they expect to see an English show with one little song in French.
C'était un petit bonheur que j'avais ramassé. Il était tout en pleurs sur le bord d'un fossé.
Là, vous me touchez beaucoup parce que le théâtre français en Alberta a été très populaire, a été très fort depuis des années. Et puis, ça surprend énormément les personnes du Québec qui arrivent ici et disent « Mon Dieu, vous parlez français? » Oui, je parle, c'est ma première langue. Et puis, on a toujours parlé français, c'est ma première langue. Et puis, le théâtre, j'ai fait du théâtre depuis que j'ai 6 ans. Et on avait un théâtre très actif avec le théâtre français d'Edmonton. J'ai joué du Molière, j'ai joué toutes sortes de rôles. J'ai été accepté à l'École nationale de théâtre au Québec, mais je suis resté ici et j'ai joué les plus beaux rôles possibles avec le théâtre français d'Edmonton. Évidemment, notre auditoire est un petit peu restreint, mais quand même, on peut jouer 5 ou 6 fois et remplir une salle 5 ou 6 fois à 200 personnes. Et c'est très important pour que les gens se voient et parce que l'assimilation est tellement rapide.
The COVID pandemic brought this edition of the Fringe complications, but also inspirations. For the first time ever, the Fringe turned one of its major venues into a space dedicated entirely to Indigenous performers, Pehonan, a stage for music, dance, stand-up comedy, drag, and theater, featuring a fascinating range of First Nations and Métis performing artists.
So we're standing right now in what used to be called the Roxy. The Roxy has now moved back into their brand new theater space on 124th, and for the next 10 days, this space is going to be called Pehonan, Edmonton Fringe's very, very first all-Indigenous theater venue. It's an Naheawak word that means a waiting place and a meeting place, and it's intended to mean a place that's like celebrating diversity and celebrating change, like a waiting place for change and a gathering place for possibilities. Theater largely, and I think this is changing, but theater largely for years and years and years has been a very Eurocentric, westernized kind of methodology of how to create, how to produce theater. And we don't necessarily see a lot of BIPOC voices in those A houses, and we don't see a lot of like young BIPOC artists looking at a place like the Fringe and being like, oh, I belong there. I want to just try writing a show and take a risk.
The youngest artist at Pehonan, 11-year-old singer and drummer Noah Green, who performs with his grandmother, auntie, and mum as the group Chubby Cree. We caught up with them during their sound check.
My name is Noah, and yeah.
You're the star of the show.
He is Chubby Cree.
And Chubby Cree.
And Chubby Cree.
This is my sister, this is my grandson, that's my daughter, that's Noah's mom.
This is your first Fringe show?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does it mean for you to be performing at the Fringe? I know this is a very weird year, but Carol, what does it mean for you to be here at the Fringe?
It makes me feel good. It makes me feel proud that we can at least be at the Fringe.
Well, who I'm singing for is like Mother Earth and our people and our ancestors.
To help me find my way back. Like there's some times when you don't have anything or anybody. Well, you feel that way, right? But it's not true. Once I hear that drum, I snap out of it, and here I am. I'm back. So it's just like it's my guidance. It's what helps me connect to my lost family. Everybody who passed away, it's my connection to them, right? And it helps me heal.
I asked Carol Powder whether performing this summer, as Canada grappled with the tragic legacy of residential schools, gave their show a different feeling.
I always knew the kids were there, but just that we didn't have any proof to. And my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my parents, they all spoke of it. My uncles, aunties, they're there, but we need to find them first, because a lot of those kids didn't come home. A lot of families waited for them to come home. But for all the things that happened to them, I can't stand it. But I know how to forgive. I would like to take them all in my arms and take them home and teach them all everything and bring them back to who they were. That's how I feel. That's how I look at it. I'm proud to be here. I'm happy that we've made it this far. I'm here. We're just going to keep going and keep going.
This is Fort Edmonton Historic Park, where Métis poet Naomi McElwraith and Métis dance artist Rebecca Sadowski work together as interpreters at the park's brand new Indigenous peoples experience. And that's where we caught up with them before the opening of their own Pehonan Fringe show, The Sashmaker.
Kiskino hamake win o tse Canada o tatsimona.
An instruction for Canadian history.
Kiamape.
Be quiet for a minute.
Peho ekwa.
Wait now.
Apowetukwe ke ka peiteng kikwai kipito weiwanek.
You might hear something in the silence. So Rebecca and I are both Métis, and we didn't know each other almost exactly 5 years ago.
Yeah.
August 19th, 2016. We were working in the park, and we were interpreters on 1885 Street, and we were in Kenneth MacDonald's house. And Kenneth MacDonald was an Orkneyman married to Emma Rowland, who was a Swampy Cree from Norway House, Manitoba. And it was a rainy Saturday. Nobody was here, so I went and got a book of poetry off the shelf, and I'm reading the poems, and then I'm going to let Rebecca tell the rest.
Yeah, and so Naomi's reading these poems, and I end up finding out she's a poet, and I say, wait a minute, I have a poetry book by a Naomi called Kiam. is that you? And so this really hilarious friendship came about from this interaction, from finding out that she's this poet of this book that I really love. And that sort of started and sparked this conversation about our shared Métis heritage and wanting to research and learn more, and some of the hardship and silence that has been sort of rampant in our family's history. And so we wanted to create a piece about it. I wanted to create a performance piece. So we've infused Naomi's poetry from Kiam, as well as some Métis contemporary dance, as well as some traditional finger weaving.
Yeah, the sash actually was brought to what we now call Canada by French women, les filles du roi, the daughters of the king that King Louis sent in the 1640s, and they, in time, started to teach the sash to the Iroquois women over there in Ganawagé, east of Montreal. The sash, currently, like in modern times, it's become quite iconic for my Métis identity. And so women will wear it over our left shoulder, and then we'll tie the knot on our right hip. Men wear it around their hip, and I can't remember which hip they tie the knot, maybe the right hip.
Yeah.
So it's very much one of the strong symbols, like the Red River cart, the infinity flag, and the Métis sash are three of the biggest symbols of Métis identity and culture.
The 40th Edmonton Fringe wasn't the Fringe anyone expected. But then again, what Fringe ever is? And despite the great difficulties COVID created, Edmonton created its own theater magic too.
Fringe didn't happen last year. It's happening this year, but it's happening closer to how the first Fringe was, like with 50 shows, like 9 venues, 5 of those being BYOVs. And we've all agreed this is the year to take a risk on something like this, to try something new and to see what sticks. And so far the response seems to be pretty good. People seem to be excited about this space and excited about the venue. And I think it's like, again, now is the time. For whatever reason, now is the time for that to happen.
It's exciting, I don't bungee jump, but this is my version of bungee jumping, is doing plays at the Fringe. Because the first time you do a show at the Fringe, it's pretty much the first time you're doing it. And there's a lot of unknowns. So you either have to be excited to surf that wave, that big wave that's coming, or, why surf?